Trust me, it'll be totally terrifying. Terrific. That's what I meant.
Today we're going to be looking at the terrible Lego Movie 2. Notably underwhelming in comparison to the original Lego Movie, and I'll be honest, I have not seen it since it came out in cinemas, so I thought it was around about time for a nice revisit on the movie. It's an interesting case study. It had a lot going against it, with the two Lego spin-off movies having declining returns financially, as well as a 5-year gap from the first one. And that's kind of the worst length you can go for when it comes to the family audience. You've either got to leave it like 2 to 3 years where the kids haven't fully grown up yet, or do a full-on 10 years like Toy Story did, such that at least you're going to have an element of nostalgia growing around it. And what makes it worse, Lord and Miller had long abandoned the franchise as their attention had moved on to Spider-Verse. All the power to them, makes a lot of sense. And then after the fact, it's also no secret that the Lego group weren't really pleased with the results, pulling a Christopher Nolan by swapping Warner Brothers over with Universal Pictures just a year later, from which they've so far gotten a Pharrell Williams biopic that flopped. Is it the Lego group that's the problem? Either way, what was it that actually led them to this decision? I mean, what is it about this terrible movie that made the franchise fall from grace? Well, let's take another look at this tale of siblings and a plot twist that I still can't believe we then repeated 3 years later with Lightyear to an eerie extent when you think about it. We open exactly where we left off, with the younger sister now also allowed to play in the Lego Den. Spoilers for the first Lego movie, by the way. We've so far only done a scene breakdown and talked about it a few times. We'll do an amazing on it at some point. But hey, that's a totally different series, technically.
What?
In which Emmett offers peace with the Duplo characters in an exchange that really sums up the world right now.
I guess if we open our hearts, everything can be awesome!
And I'll be honest, the opening for this movie is really solid. It does carry on from the first movie pretty seamlessly. It's conceptually on par with the first, the sister scream being this apocalyptic world-shattering sound being the highlight. You can read behind each of the lines here, two siblings trying to one-up each other whilst they're playing.
I eat lasers.
That's impossible!
We know how this world works now, so may as well lean into it. And the fact that the sister's not playing along with the brothers' rules turns the Duplo creatures into this unstoppable force. It's a version of playtime we've never gotten from Toy Story. We never saw Andy or Bonnie struggle to negotiate with a sibling, you know? This descends into a full-on existential war, the kid's perspective kind of slipping into the dad's from the first movie. Clearly frustrated by everything he's building being pulled apart. Thematic or a contradiction? It's here we get a contractually obligated Justice League cameo, complete with Jason Momoa's Aquaman, seeing as him and Wonder Woman were their only major successes at the time. Just you wait for all those Jurassic World and Minions cameos getting funneled into the universe movies, if those ever actually happen. It then cuts to a 5-year later title card, which initially I wasn't sure if it was just an exaggeration of a weekend at best, which would have been fine enough with just the dialogue.
A lifetime has passed since then.
However, no, they do a legitimate 5-year time jump in this. Which, to be fair, is the gap since the first one, during which the main kid has aged. The kid, by the way, is called Finn. Just learned that from IMDb, good to know. Anyway, with a time jump like that, I guess we're getting more parallels to Lightyear. Anyway, now that Finn has grown up, the narration keeps that voice with a now moody kid in mind.
We built a grittier, more mature society.
This is Apocalypseburg, which showcases the same cinematic visual quality as the other Lego movies, albeit something less striking as something completely made of Lego. We'd essentially already seen the symptoms of this in the other two spin-off Lego movies, ditching the amazing Lego water visuals for just water, you know? And I think that's one of the notable elements that make these lesser movies. Here, it's all presented as Lego, but it just looks less like it, weirdly. I don't know what it is about the background, because this almost seems to be a weird middle ground where it's nice that they have conceptually done it, but the actual set design doesn't really fully embellish that concept that brings in that wow factor. It's almost as if because we've gotten used to how the world works, the magic is gone and it's forgotten how to present it to us again. That being said, it's not a bad dynamic to see Emmett still keeping in as his happy-go-lucky character in the midst of this dystopian society he now lives in. And using the opening routine here as a juxtaposition to the first Lego movie as well, it's just kind of that neat, repetitive humor that I love to see.
Scarfield, Deathface, Metal Scratch, Razor, Laser Beam.
And yes, that's Chris Pratt making a Garfield joke whilst playing the animated character everyone really appreciated him for, albeit a good few years earlier. Emmett's very much the best and worst thing that happened to Chris Pratt's voice acting career. Like, he was so perfect for this character, you know, the generic default everyman, that people suddenly thought he could do anything by being himself. We also have an attempt at weaving the Lego Batman movie into the timeline here, despite this apocalypse happening immediately after the original. Complete with Alfred not saying anything, because presumably they didn't want to pay Ralph Fiennes a full fee in this one.
Just me and Alfred.
And in fact, that exact same thing also happens for Bad Cop, as presumably Liam Neeson didn't come back at all. He just gets one singular grunt in this movie. I mean, if they had gotten both Liam Neeson and Ralph Fiennes along for this one, that would have made the weirdest Schindler's List reunion. But I do think the fact that the narration is Wild-style brooding by herself is pretty funny, and consistent with her character too.
Stare off into the distance and then narrate whatever grim thoughts come into your mind.
And here we also get some nice setups for later in the movie, rather brilliantly weaved in as Emmett's light-hearted thoughts. Nicely done. As is how they combine the relationship between Emmett and Wildstyle with a parallel to the two sides of the boys' inner conflict. Emmett representing the positive childhood joy and Wildstyle being the mature side. As demonstrated when Emmett tries just building a normal house again.
We also have to grow up sometime. Can you do that for me?
I can try.
A lot of this movie's first act, I'd say, is as good as the first movie, with the animation itself being consistently great throughout most of it, just with how much emotion they can get across on these Lego minifigure faces. For a character with limited motion, Emmett is incredibly expressive. However, Wildstyle's concerns seem justified as something new enters the fray. In which we get into an action sequence with some decent gags here and there.
I think my dentist used to work in this office.
It doesn't quite have the frenetically fast-paced gags of the first movie, but, you know, they're still solid. A little bit of that Lord and Miller element isn't here this time.
It was perfectly fine without reason!
There is some glimmers of being Lego-fied from the otherwise barren landscape too, the dust in the desert trail under the vehicles being the best example of this. However, it's not long until it's time to bring in the Lego Friends character designs. Yes, we're moving on from Duplo now. Got another brand to give a subtextual push for, as they do it with this still weirdly semi-accurate joke.
How many movies have they made about you? Because there are like 9 about me, and like 3 others in various stages of development.
Sorry if you thought his solo movie had burnt out all of the self-aware Batman gags, because boy do they have some more here. And to be fair, doing a little bit more of the older stuff that we've come to enjoy is obviously a good direction to take, even if they don't stick the landing a lot in this movie.
You fought, and master built, and kicked butt, and then the hapless male was the leader.
And it all starts up the rift between Emmett and Wildstyle.
Isn't tough enough?
Not tough enough?
Yeah.
So I think here is probably the very first misstep in the movie. Of course, this is going to take us along the message that you don't need to be tough, and it will discuss, you know, the masculinity side of things. A very good message to run along with, but I would kind of say that this is kind of where the movie begins to retread the first one a little too closely. It's not a million miles away from Emmett being underestimated and seemingly incompetent in the first one. We even get another display of Emmett being a doofus here with his triple-decker couch.
Triple-decker couch!
You know, maybe let us handle it.
Like, we've already done this. This is full on just the same territory again. It's one thing to be paralleling and getting the same vibes of the first movie but more, and there's another of doing the first movie again but slightly differently. This isn't Back to the Future. We're just right back at both Emmett and everyone around him acting like he's not good enough again, just with different semantics. Last time, he wasn't special. This time, he's not tough. However, the capture and takeoff with all of the principal characters, it's fine, they make a self-aware joke about it. Being blended together with the shots of the sister doing the same thing work really nicely together as a nice match cut sequence. We're never gonna have the surprise of the first reveal ever again, but they incorporate the outer Lego events within the plot nicely enough. However, then we're right back at the whole bunch of recognizable IB characters rip into Emmett routine from the first movie again, albeit with some decent gags.
Now with Batman gone, and Marvel not returning our calls,
That and Larry Poppins are the ones for me.
A spoonful of salt helps the medicine go down.
no notes. But it is just the epitome of, we've done this before, which will just mutate further as the movie goes. You can give Emmett a hard time, sure. Keeping him in the messianic hero position forever would have been super boring, of course. But equally, it does seem weird now that everyone's treating him like crap again. And it's done in a way that doesn't feel investing the second time around, because it's just naturally far less organic. And so, one shutdown later and they kick him out of the vault. He makes himself a ship out of his house though, so at least his character development's not a full retcon. And it's interesting, because it's not necessarily Emmett himself who's gone back a step, it's just everyone else around him. But this movie doesn't just have a one-track problem, the big secondary issue comes into play. From this point on, a lot of this movie is quite static in two principal locations, the other of which we will see in a bit. But compare it to the first movie, where we consistently are going on a constant in-motion adventure that goes through several different locations whilst being frequently on the move. Each location being animated with an impressive level of detail, and is used as an opportunity to express the diversity in the creative worlds of what the LEGO branding can achieve, in the ways of set design and just in playing with all sorts of genres. But here, we just stick around different parts of this ambiguous imagination realm, all with backgrounds too grandiose to take in that trademark LEGO detail. Conceptually, it's fair enough. This is a different approach to the first movie. But practically, this approach comes out far more dull. Except Cloud Cuckoo Land, which very much did this vibe already. There's nothing wrong with keeping things to the sister room, but for what it is meant to be, it kind of all just looks like this one bit.
Susan, would you get our guests something to drink?
That being said, the animation of Queen Whatever I Wanna Be is really creatively done. It actually captures the creative potential of LEGO in a whole new way. And of course, the world around her should reflect that influx quality. However, what it leaves us with is quite an abstract setting. With this, the desert, and Emmett's outer space stuff coming up, we now have three distinctively less detailed settings compared to the original movie. Whereas back then, we had the likes of Bricksburg, the Wild West, Middle Zealand, Cloud Cuckoo Land, Lord Business's Tower, and even the sea was incredibly well detailed. Eye candy all by itself. You could tell with your eyes that everything was made of LEGO. And yes, the surfaces of this palace can be seen to be LEGO in closer shots, but it's just not as tangible as those previous settings, you know? Like, imagine if she had a proper LEGO castle.
Oh no, are we in a musical?
Great tune though.
No ulterior motives, just wanna help where I can.
What's also clever here is you actually have the initial subtext of the villain blatantly trying not to sound villainous, only for that ultimately to be a huge double bluff. It's certainly a respectable successor of the song I've so far managed to not put back in your head, but probably have now by just alluding to it. As does the Queen allude a potential arranged marriage situation for Batman.
This chick gets me.
Yeah, that's one of the subplots in this. It's certainly a choice, but also something you can imagine a younger sister doing. Meanwhile, we get some more cool animation as Emmett goes through a portal. I don't know how much of a Guardians nod that was meant to be, but judging by where we go next with him on the Chris Pratt meta commentary, I could see it being deliberate.
Who was that?
Because it's here that we finally meet
Rex Danger Vest.
Indeed, also voiced by Chris Pratt. And I'm not kidding about the Pratt references either.
Galaxy defending archaeologist, raptor trainer.
It's certainly a choice, and reads kind of interestingly since the Chris Pratt fatigue has been a calling the past few years. It's no subtle homage, that's for sure.
And having chiseled features previously hidden under baby fat.
It's a kind of weird commentary on Chris Pratt's career since the first LEGO movie, with Emmett representing the humble Parks and Recs route. Between these two mainline LEGO movies, this guy went on from sitcom star to one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood. We're in the business of crazy statistics today, but they really need to comment on it? I know this character has a message beyond Chris Pratt's career, but I do wonder if it's just a little bit too in-jokey, you know? It's certainly gonna be an element that dates this movie horrendously the more time passes beyond this point. It's already a little bit glazing, you know? Also, didn't need to wait for that Universal takeover apparently. The Raptors are all over the shop, as does the plot, as Rex's presence in this movie does make the lore a tad bit more convoluted, as we later learn. We have implications that Finn has time travel in mind for what he's playing, but Rex already knows what happens to Finn and his sister with Armageddon. Yeah, it gets a bit confusing, especially for all the kids watching. And again, other than the Lego pool table, his spaceship doesn't feel especially Lego-y, you know? Like, you have a character whose whole shebang is... You know, we've seen Lego-y spaceships being made in real time in these movies in the past, yet suddenly now, this is the quality we get. Benny would be so disappointed.
That's okay, I didn't really want to build a spaceship anyway, that's cool.
Over to another shiny, supposedly Lego background, we get some more Lego Friends miniatures to enjoy.
Welcome to the Palace of Infinite Reflection.
It's time for a spa session, perhaps a more stereotypical portrayal of a girl's playtime. I think generally they ride that line pretty well though. It's not noteworthy for criticism. So props on them for not going too far overboard, I guess. Does that deserve props? They do make a big deal of Wild Style's hair being dyed, suggesting she's not as dark and brooding as she lets on. An interesting direction with that character.
Are you covering up some undark past?
It kind of feels like it would be okay for her to keep the whole edgy goth attitude, really. Breaking away from everything having to be bright and colorful. Meanwhile, Emmett gets some being tough training. And I think this next gag's deliberate. Or my brain is just well and truly ruined.
You're gonna need to be a master breaker.
Hey there! Thank you for making it to the halfway mark of this video. Come along to subscribe if you're interested in more terrible animated movies. You know how the drill goes at this point. So I'll let you get back to the second half of our breakdown of the terrible Lego movie sequel.
You're gonna need to be a master breaker.
This is followed by the discovery of a village that looks like some kind of dystopian 1950s brainwashed suburbia. It's a nice idea, and finally, a tangible Lego environment in this movie, including all the DC characters again, and reinforcing the idea of who Lex Luthor is, because the kids watching won't know.
You're friends with your sworn enemy, Lex Luthor?
Really goes to show how in the dumps DC are at this point in time. I mean, I guess the only movie he's been in recently was the one that didn't do very well, and he wasn't bold until the end of the movie in that one. And yes, Jason Momoa pops back in too here. Weirdly, Aquaman was DC's only movie to cross $1 billion around this time. So of course, they want to get him in there. Just in time for this terrible joke.
General Zod just made homemade guac.
He's a Zod-sen.
We'll accept the fact that there are 3 versions of Wonder Woman, giant Duplo version included. It's a funnier use of acknowledging the different brands.
Listen to the music, let your mind go.
It does, however, bring us back to the mysterious song that has everyone brainwashed, which does feel like yet another retread of the first movie, honestly. They are pretty upfront about it.
You gotta be kidding me.
But it does feel like the same gag, just more spelt out. It's a nice enough sounding song, it just feels like familiar territory, you know? Which makes it less impactful than last time. A brainwashing song to keep everyone happy but complacent. The visuals in this scene, however, are as great as ever. It reminds you why they had to use computer animation for these, as we get some towering visuals that still look constructed by Lego, yet would be impossible to do without CGI. This goes until Emmett discovers he has fist powers too. Back to the palace with another joke I do like.
I love the chocolate fountain.
Life is so fragile.
Everything is building to the matrimonial ceremony. This movie's world doing what it does best in heightening its reality around an otherwise atypical game a kid would play with their toys. And another interesting set comes into play here with Emmett and Rex in what is presumably a box full of Lego pieces. A cornerstone of Lego sets that we somehow didn't see in the first one, but is worked in pretty organically here. Less organic, we then have a let's all go to the lobby gag that I already saw The Simpsons do long before this. Its randomness is appreciated nonetheless. This then leads us to the reunion of Emmett and Wildstyle with another solid gag.
Who is this guy?
So you can see him? I was so worried he was just a projection of what my ego needs deep down.
The story may not be as strong as it quickly falls off a cliff soon enough, but there's still some solid individual gags in this. There's clearly still some remnants of the Lego movie charm in here. Thank goodness, it is the sequel. Except for maybe
Social media influencer!
I'm sure the influencer jokes were funnier in 2019, but still, we don't need to date stuff like this. I'll take it over Influencer Smurf, though. Meanwhile, we get some musical justification to make this whole marriage feel a little more consensual.
Oh great, more singing right on time.
And this song's pretty good, like the other songs in this movie, but this time it's the Lego Batman movie territory that this feels like it's retreading a bit here instead. It's like a sequel that really wants to go back to the good old days. Because I mean, the Lego Batman movie seemingly did the impossible of managing to make a feature-length character study with this parody version of Batman to glorious results. However, in doing that, they essentially dried up the well on Batman references and in-jokes that they actually had left.
I can fly.
The Batwing can fly.
Which for me, left this song number that once again psychoanalyzes Batman feels just a tad, we've done this before, you know? How is it in just a second movie it feels like it's already run out of steam? I mean, technically there's more than 2 movies. there's 3 in the context at this point anyway. But yeah, that happens, leaving Batman happy to hitch up with this formless assembly of bricks. Whatever lights your bat signal, I guess. Back to the anti-marital bunch. I do love how all these things, including the wedding cake being built, are also shown from Finn's imagination's perspective. His sister just making a Lego cake becomes this big, sinister construction surrounded by furnaces. With Rex and Emmett questioning if Wildstyle's hair means she's brainwashed also gives us an inkling that their take on the situation may not be reliable. After some more Batman marital schmoozing, weirdly the most chemistry an on-screen Batman has ever had with a love interest, the fight between Wildstyle and General Mayhem, that's genuinely her name, gets us back to some master building action. Bit easy to see everything's made of Lego and the characters physically pick it apart. Though, this is a bit too Trolls for my liking.
Oh, I feel dizzy.
Weirdly, Lego is one of the few toy companies to not produce a toy that does that. There's so much unicorn poop these days. Anyway, time for the heavy-handed message of the movie.
You've changed perfectly.
As we get closer to the idea that they might be doing the wrong thing, as we do with Rex's potential identity.
Don't thank me, thank yourself.
Meanwhile, as Mayhem's mask falls off, we get further setup for where this is going, albeit with a couple clunky lines.
I knew there was some sweetness under that darkness.
Does the job, I guess. This one's better.
I tried to wear a mask and talk tough, a language I thought you'd understand.
Even mentioning the I'm Totally Not Evil song from earlier was genuine, it does get across that overriding story of 2 siblings trying to understand each other, but taking away the wrong messages from it. And then it is revealed that the Queen is in fact the Lego heart Emmett made at the start of the movie, which I guess makes him her dad? And Batman's marrying that love heart? Okay. It's a nice symbol though, as presumably Finn made that for his sister, only to misinterpret her playing with those pieces as her destroying what he made for her.
Wait, if you guys are good, then who's the bad guy?
And the plot reveals itself. Honestly, it's the one choice that wholly takes a different approach from the original, which had the more clear-cut president business. And you gotta feel sorry for Emmett, who was on this wavelength before any of them, only to switch lanes because of the pressure to be tougher put on him by the others. Epitomized by this surprisingly hard-hitting moment.
I like you the way you were.
Sweet, innocent, kind.
The real Lucy would never say that.
And as Emmett destroys the temple, there's some great details going on here. Like everyone who's been played with by the sister, presumably also voiced by her, all start to cry like presumably her, leaving Wildstyle in the human reality position this time.
You shouldn't take my stuff.
All the while, it's time to go full Lightyear.
What, you and I? We and us.
I do have to say, I think I prefer this version of the Lightyear Zurg twist. For one, spending a lot more time to have the Rex and Emmett characters together before the reveal makes us much more invested than just old Buzz turning up. Regardless, it still gets pretty convoluted. Apparently doing this plotline in general doesn't really work. There's implications throughout this movie that there is both Finn's game, but also that Emmett legitimately did travel back from an actual alternative future. I mean, the first movie did tease that the Lego universe does have a reality and sentience, with Emmett tapping around Will Ferrell's desk and all, which he does here again, anger-powered and whatever. But here, I couldn't blame someone for getting a tad lost plot-wise. I mean, I do like all the time machines getting referenced.
Doctor Who's TARDIS.
But it still doesn't evade the fact that he does actually travel back in time. And then the time machine takes him back to Lego reality, which is traditionally controlled by the kids. So, was that bit in the real world him actually moving like in the first and actually making a time machine? Or is that still Finn's game? Who knows? Anyway, our Mamageddon has a more straightforward reveal.
This is your fault.
What's going on up here?
The biggest W of which is perhaps finally getting the stepping on Lego bricks gag in there.
I need very close in pain level to childbirth.
It's here we learn, as implied by the 5 years title card, that this fighting has been going on for a long time, and this was the last chance before everything gets taken away. Pretty brutal parenting, honestly. I wasn't in the room for these fights, but must have been pretty bad to outright ban all of their Lego.
Just wanted you to play with me.
It's an interesting switch as well to put Finn in the bad guy position in this one. They somehow managed to make this one gag at the end of the first movie into a whole arc about siblings struggling to play together. And that's pretty impressive.
It's time to put away childish things.
And these comments we've had from Rex also speaks to something we don't really get from the live action snippets. That pressure for Finn to be more mature and less childish internally. Continuing the creative parallels, they go all in on them putting the Lego away as this apocalyptic Into the Abyss event.
It's Purgatory Dave now. What?
Time for a one-of-a-kind dark gag that will go over a lot of kids' heads.
I had theater tickets tonight.
I mean, wow. I also like that the final punctuation on this moment is the sister just giving Finn a quick look before walking away. Into the Abyss, and we head into...
Everything's not awesome. I am so depressed.
We could only avoid this earworm for so long, but it's a pretty effective reprise for this moment in the movie. It turns a song that kind of defined blind optimism into one that starts off accepting that some things do suck, only to then build back into optimism in working through it. It's weird to say, but it's kind of a powerful moment, leading us into Emmett having another kindness speech between Emmett and the villain. Same thing as last time, but it is still a good sentiment.
I'm gonna grow up, but I won't stop caring about the people in my life.
It's time to shatter that idea that growing up means just being tougher. A message a lot of self-appointed figures of masculinity are sadly pushing a lot of guys away from, which is why I can't really fault a movie for pushing against that, even back in 2019. Interchanging between Emmett and Finn going up to his sister, we're left with a message about accepting other people's perspectives and worldviews. It's a tad on the nose, but it's a good message to be putting out there. Still kinda depressing that it took them like 5 years for the two of them to get along though. That's like a lifetime in kids' years. The lines between what's now the kids' game and what's actually happening continues to blur as Emmett and Rex have their real world fight while the Raptors take on the others in the Lego world.
Just the expression of depth of imagination in the subconscious of an adolescent.
Oh, so was that the case with Emmett moving in the first movie too? This lore is completely lost to me, guys. There are elements that go a little bit, too far.
Who you calling so-called?
And as Wild Style enters the fray with her Lego world enforcing abilities, I guess that is just the case now.
You came back for him.
Which leads to Rex disappearing, seeing as Emmett was never abandoned. And as Emmett and Wild Style walk into the sunset, we go to Finn and his sister playing in the garden together. It's admittedly a really sweet way to end the movie. Alongside the best joke they could do, considering Will Ferrell was unavailable to do anything beyond a couple voice lines for this movie.
Honey, where are my pants?
Oh, and the reveal that Wild Style was one of the people behind Everything Is Awesome. Which, considering all the "Are you a DJ" gags from the first movie, fits together pretty nicely as the end moment. And we finish off with the one thing that is definitely a step up from the original, an ending credit scene with a Lonely Island song. It's about as great an end credits as you can do. All about how great end credits are. It's bang on that Lego movie humor, and I'm surprised that no one's done it before to my knowledge. And you know what? Having revisited this movie again, to say that Lego Movie 2 is terrible, I don't think is fully accurate. It's not half bad, actually. In a bubble. Admittedly, I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I was going to. The gags are definitely on par with the first, though maybe a little bit less punchy and pacey without that Lord and Miller touch. The storyline with the sisters pretty well executed and at times really touching, along with the wider message, and the match-cutting layers between what's real and what's story works really nicely together. However, there's also a lot of the story that either retreads the previous movies too closely, feels a little bit too static, or is just straight up convoluted in time travel and all sorts in that direction. And without that touch of Lord and Miller, it just doesn't have that frenetic, on-the-run energy of the first movie, nor the surprise of what that first movie was. Unfortunately, when you have a first movie that was excellent, you fall into that classic sequel syndrome of not being as good and missing the mark by a good margin. I mean, as another example, I'd say Toy Story 4 is a really good movie. It's just unfortunate that it was following up from arguably the best trilogy of all time. It's just another one that's quite good. Had the original Lego movie not existed and we just had this as the secondary runner-up, I think this movie would get a surprising amount of praise. It's got some notable red flags that definitely drag it down, and clearly was bad enough to completely decimate the Lego movie franchise under Warner Brothers entirely, but in its own little bubble, I think it's got a whole lot more going for it than what it's remembered by. It's not so far as to call it the amazing Lego movie sequel, but perhaps it goes a little bit above the standards for what we'd say is terrible. I just can't quite call it a terrible movie. Sometimes in doing this terrible series, a movie is surprisingly not as bad as it seems, and it's happened a couple of times on this channel, but that is our thoughts at least on what we'll still call in the title, the terrible Lego movie sequel. The question is now whether Universal Pictures will actually make a fictional Lego story, or maybe the Lego Group's movies are doomed for the next 5 years as well. For now though, I'd best end it off there. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do tell me your thoughts on Lego Movie 2. Have you seen it since it came out in cinemas? I'd love to hear the discussion down below or on our Discord, and I shall see you all in a little bit. Bye-bye!